Hi, boys and girls. We're continuing with Mr. Granite is from Another Planet. Chapter 7. Mr. Granite goes overboard. It was recess. We were on the swings in the playground. Me and the guys were talking about important stuff, like who won the big game last night. Andrea and her friends were talking about girly stuff, like what color should they paint their toenails. That's when Mr. Granite came over, and he was carrying some kind of machine. And everybody off the swings, he shouted. Why, we all asked. I need to attach this generator to the top of the swing set, Mr. Granite replied. So every time you swing back and forth, you will make electricity. We had to get stuff off the swing set and go over to the field near the cows and the windmill. I miss Mrs. Daisy, said Neil, the new kid. She was normal. We used to say Miss Daisy was weird, said Michael, but Mr. Granite's even weirder. Moo, said a cow. Mr. Granite's going overboard with the green stuff, said Ryan. He's fallen out of a boat. He's falling out of a boat? I asked. No, dumbhead, said Ryan. I mean, he's getting carried away. I don't see anybody carrying him away, I pointed out. I looked around to make sure nobody was carrying Mr. Granite away. Moo, said the cow. I heard that Mr. Granite is working on a machine that makes electricity every time you blink your eyes, Michael told us. We'll have to wear it like a pair of glasses. That's crazy, I said. Heard that Mr. Granite asked the music teacher, Mr. Loring, to write a song with just one note, said Neil, the nude kid. Why? So he wouldn't waste any notes, Neil said. That's why that will be the most boring song in the history of the world, I said. Moo, agreed the cow. Andrea and her friends were sitting on the bench a few feet away, looking all worried. What's eating you? I asked Andrea. Did you get an A- on the math quiz? No, Arlo, Andrea replied. I got an A+, but I just figured out something. What? We all asked. Maybe Mr. Granite isn't a real teacher after all, Andrea said. Did you ever think of that? What do you mean? I asked. Well, maybe he's just pretending to be a teacher, she said. I think that Mr. Granite is from another planet. That's nuts, I told her. I think about it, Arlo, Andrea said. Mr. Granite knows a lot about planets, stars, and space, right? Yeah. And he doesn't understand the English language very well, right? Yeah. He has supervision too, said Neil. He sees through walls. Did you ever notice that Mr. Granite doesn't have any hair growing out of his ears or nose, Ryan asked? Andrea might be right. After all, the first rule of being a grown-up is that your hair starts growing out of your ears and nose. My dad has to trim his nose hairs every week. Maybe Mr. Granite is from another planet. Moo, said the cow. He doesn't look like an alien, said Michael, and aliens are little green guys with big heads. But maybe Mr. Granite is disguised as a human, I suggested. Yeah, said Ryan. Maybe if we peeled off his human mask, underneath we'll find a little green guy with a big head. Mr. Granite's nice, said Emily. Maybe he's a good alien. Yeah, like E.T., said Ryan. That's my favorite movie. Maybe Mr. Granite's like a nice alien who was left here on Earth, like E.T. There was no nice aliens, Neil said. You're supposed to kill aliens. Yeah, I added, with laser beams. Stop trying to scare Emily, said Andrea. Mr. Granite is probably going to take over the world and turn us into flesh-eating robots, I said. We've got to do something, said Emily, and she went running away. The only problem was that Emily ran right into a cow, and she was on the ground, freaking out like a crybaby. Moo, said the cow. Oh, said Emily, which is moo upside down and backwards. My dad is a policeman, said Michael, and he says you can't accuse people of stuff unless you have proof. So let's get the proof that Mr. Granite is an alien, said Neil, the nude kid. How are we going to get proof, Ryan said. I have an idea, Andrea told everybody. Let's follow Mr. Granite home after school. I have my camera in my backpack. We can snoop around. I'll take pictures of him, and when he peels his human face mask off, we'll have proof. Everybody agreed that Andrea was a genius and that she should get the Nobel Prize. That's a prize they give out to people who don't have bells. Chapter 8. The world's biggest iPod. All afternoon, I was watching Mr. Granite very carefully to see if his face was going to come off. Finally, the 3 o'clock came and the bell rang. Any questions, Mr. Granite said, as we got our stuff out of our cubbies. Are you going to destroy our planet? I asked. Will you peel off your face? Neil asked. Don't be silly, replied Mr. Granite. Once we were outside, me, Ryan, and Michael raced to the bike rack. Andrea and Emily were already there. How will we find out where Mr. Granite lives? Asked Emily. We should drop pieces of candy on the ground, Ryan said. That's what the boy did in E.T. I'm not wasting my candy, I said. We should stalk Mr. Granite, suggested Michael. You mean we should hit him with celery? I asked. What good would that do? No, dumbhead, Andrea said. Stalking is... She never got a chance to finish her sentence because at that very second, Mr. Granite zoomed past us on his bike. Look, said Ryan. Here he goes. We all hopped on our bikes and followed Mr. Granite, being careful not to let him see us. Maybe Mr. Granite will make our bikes fly, Ryan said. That's what E.T. did. Will you forget about E.T. already? Michael told Ryan. Finally, Mr. Granite turned into a driveway. Well, I don't mean he became a driveway. That would be weird. He just rode his bike up into a driveway next to a house. And there was a big white box in front of the house, and it had the word pods on it. Hey, check it out, I told everybody. Look at the size of that iPod. Mr. Granite lives in an iPod, I asked Michael. Man, I said, how many songs do you think would fit on that pod? It's not an iPod, dumbhead, Andrea said. It's one of those big storage boxes. It says pods. Oh, it made sense that Mr. Granite lived in a pod. I saw this movie called Invasions of the Body Snatchers. It had these pod people who looked just like humans, but they worked secretly to spread more pods until they could replace the entire human race. It was cool. Anybody who lives in a pod has to be an alien, I said. My mom says we should accept people no matter where they live, Emily said. Your mom's weird, I told her. Maybe he's building a transmitter in there to connect his home planet, said Ryan, like an E.T. Give it a rest with E.T., will you? I told Ryan. Mr. Granite opened a door and went inside the pod thing. We all snuck up to it like we were secret agents. It was cool. Andrea took a little camera out of her backpack. I'll bet he was taking off his human mask in there, Ryan whispered. I'll snap the pictures when he peels off his face, Andrea whispered. That'll be a real Kodak moment, I whispered. I'm scared, whispered Emily. Maybe we should... She never got a chance to finish her sentence because at that very moment, Mr. Granite popped out of the pod. Eee! We all screamed. G'day, mates, Mr. Granite said. He was completely normal. What can I do for you blokes? I said, we were just wondering if you trimmed your nose hair. You followed me home to ask if I'd trim my nose hair, asked Mr. Granite. Well, actually, we wanted to know where you were born, said Andrea. I came from Neptune, said Mr. Granite. Wow, we all said, which is Mom upside down. So it was true. Mr. Granite is from another planet. Yes, he said, Neptune, New Jersey. Then my parents moved to Australia. Oh.